king of all Twitches, who is the Texan hater of our beloved interactive audience, I'm still puzzled you guys thought the Texans were going to win. They got so infatuated with a lady that turned out to be smelly, where you don't want it to smell. Hey, God forbid I believe in something. You saw my speech at the end of Friday's show. I said it wasn't rational or justifiable to pick the Texans to beat Baltimore. Even though I like CJ Stroud better than Lamar Jackson, I still feel that way, but Jackson played well in this game, and CJ Stroud looked like he just did not have enough to work with. Am I making excuses for CJ? Yeah. And I think you get to make excuses for the team when they have the fun, happy honeymoon or first couple of weeks of a new passionate and a hot relationship. You're going to overlook some of the flaws. You're going to believe in this person a little bit more because the boinking's so fun. So here we are. Yeah, definitely getting cold reality on Saturday. I'm sorry that I chose for a change to be positive and believe in something. Never again. Never again.
Yes, the first date hit it out of the park against the Browns. What a wonderful first date. Second date, less good. Less good. The cracks were there. Maybe we didn't want to see it. But ultimately, I mean, to go away from the metaphor now, the Texans really did. They just got out. Like, they just had less good players than the
way
Ravens
less good
did.
players.
Like, I do think at a certain point they ran out of ways to paper mache their way past their issues.
It wasn't the defense's fault. It was the offense that did nothing, and the defense ran out of gas in the second half.
Yeah, it wasn't good in the second quarter when they started calling the Boise State against Oklahoma plays, where it was everything had to be a reverse to get any sort of rushing yards, to get 4 yards on the ground. That was when you're like, oh man, thank God Steven Sims returned that for a touchdown, because I wasn't sure how they were going to get a sustained drive. I just meant a sustained drive.
Think about some of the big plays for the Texans, like Stroud escaping the rush and lobbing a beautiful pass to Devin Singletary out of the backfield for what ends up being a ridiculous catch downfield. That was one of the best Texans plays of the game, and clearly that was not drawn up to end up being that. That ended up just being a broken play that C.J. Stroud worked some magic on. And that was maybe their best offensive play.
Yeah, and that was going to be their best chance, was, C.J. Stroud operating outside of structure. And just making plays schoolyard style, which he didn't make enough of.
He didn't get sacked, didn't throw an interception, but didn't make enough happen.
Pretty clean game.
It was a clean game, but the penalties were not clean. No. And the weird, super cutesy stuff was annoying, especially when you know that Bobby Slowik had interviewed with the Tennessee Titans and the Carolina Panthers on Thursday, and knowing before the game even started that he was going to speak to the Commanders, the Falcons, and Seahawks. 5 interviews, 3 points. Maybe an unfair of a way to look at it, but and I also don't think that he was distracted. I truly don't. I think these coaches work such long hours. I don't think that this is going to get in the way. At the same time, I also understand why people would characterize it that way. El Barrio Cookers asks, you throw a lot of money at Bobby, and if he still walks out, who's there for the replacement? They're not going to lose both Gerard Johnson and Bobby Slowik. They will probably lose, worst case scenario, one of the two. I would think that Gerard Johnson, if Slowik leaves, is definitely going to take the offensive coordinator job. He worked firsthand with Stroud this past season. He is also somebody who has lived here for a lot of his life. I know Gerard. I don't know what's going through his mind right now, but good for him getting those interview opportunities with New Orleans, and I forget the other team that he got it with. But if he's getting those, the Texans are clearly going to move him up to offensive coordinator should Bobby Slowik go to another coaching gig, which would have to be a head coaching gig.
Yeah, it feels like it's pretty clearly either Slowik leaves to be a head coach, Johnson gets bumped up to OC, or Slowik stays as OC, doesn't get a head coaching job, and Johnson becomes an OC somewhere else.
Right.
That to me seems like the most likely situation. I guess he could just be interviewing and not get these jobs for Johnson, but I mean, it seems like he has a pretty good resume. Not just what he did with C.J. Stroud this year, but even going back, he helped you shave 0.2 off your 40 time.
The most important thing he's ever done is that in 10 minutes, he helped me run a respectable 40 time.
I mean, the Texans cannot afford to lose this guy.
No, he's a great coach, truly. Like, I learned from him how to be the fastest man I can be.
The fastest man in Houston radio.
Yeah. When DJ's not on the air.
Yeah, as long as DJ doesn't have cleats.
Right, when DJ's not on the air. Some more comments, youtube.com/ESPN Houston. Jason P says, Bobby needs to go. He spent all his time preparing for interviews instead of focusing on the game. He also wasn't that good of a play caller, in my opinion. The two cutesy plays that he had in this game, one of them was the double reverse pass where the Texans were 1st and 10 on the Ravens side of the field. They lose 5 yards. The other was this weird screen that they tried to Brevin Jordan. And theoretically, Stroud could have hit that to Jordan. He might run straight up the seam for a touchdown. The Ravens defensive tackle made a great play deflecting it. It was the only play that the Texans nearly turned the football over on offense. But it did feel like one of those plays that was way over cute when the Texans probably could have just taken 2 to 3 yards. The problem was, if you ran the football on Saturday, the chances that you would get back to the line of scrimmage seemed very low. So I don't think that Slowik, one, deserves as much blame as he is getting right now, largely due to the interviews that he's getting. And two, I don't know what Slowik really could have done differently in this game other than running the football less. But that is something that they did all year, and the balance usually helped them. They just were not able to consistently run the football outside of against teams like Tennessee.
Yeah, and if we're looking forward to next year, like already, that is, I think, the thing that the Texans need to improve at. Maybe not the most. Maybe another pass catcher would be probably top of the list for your Texans offseason wish list. But right. I think a running game would be second. I mean, they pretty clearly need at least another running back in there, in that room. And maybe this is something where just having your healthy offensive line from day one. If you get a little more offensive line health luck, maybe this running attack looks better. But that, to me, when you cannot run the ball against good teams, you're tying one hand behind your back already.
Right, and then it's a team that doesn't make mistakes and has guys that fly all over the field and are going to make it tough for anyone not named Nico Collins to get open. You don't have Tank Dell. Right. Your receivers after Nico Collins in this one. Dalton Schultz, he has a pass thrown his way, he drops it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Tank Dell being healthy should help. Maybe don't have. I know we need help in the running game. Maybe don't have him block at the goal line.
Yeah, that too.
But I think that there's. I mean, the best part is that you have the hardest thing already figured out. Mm-hmm. You already have your quarterback. I think they just need to build around just a little bit, just a piece here or there. And I think this offense is gonna be the last time they don't score a touchdown in a playoff game.
I think you're right.
Jackson keeps Stanley in front of him. Touchdown, Lamar.
So that's how the Houston Texans season comes to an end, 34-10. They lose to the Baltimore Ravens. They had chances. Could have taken a halftime lead if Kaimi Fairbairn didn't miss a 47-yard field goal. And could have potentially stopped the Ravens on their touchdown drive to open the second half. Jalen Petrie had a couple of shots and interceptions. And then on their next drive, they run this weird hocus-pocus double reverse throwback to C.J. Stroud that results in a negative 5-yard gain. And that was the closest it was the rest of the way. Texans punt, Ravens march down the field, 12 plays, 93 yards, over. And you leave feeling like you're nowhere close to the upper class of the AFC, the top shelf, Kansas City, Baltimore. I guess to a degree, Buffalo. You're not in the same conversation. And it's frustrating because this season was a success. This was arguably the worst team in the NFL last season, with Lovie Smith as head coach, with Davis Mills as quarterback. You win the last game of the year. All of a sudden, you have the number 2 overall pick. But, I mean, take a look at the draft class that Nick Caserio put together. A very good one. Some would argue it was the best draft class. You got the quarterback. You got a good defensive player. You got a good head coach. The future definitely does look bright. Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans had this to say about this season and how it wasn't their time, but he's still very proud.
Yeah, it's not hard, man. I'm proud of our guys. All right, I told the guys keep their head up. I'm proud of them for the entire year. Right, this wasn't our moment right now. This wasn't our time right now. We didn't get it done, but I'm proud of each and every coach and player in the locker room. Right, for what we've accomplished throughout the entire year, how we grew throughout the entire year, and I'm proud of our guys. Right, and that's why I told all our guys keep their head up. Like, credit to the Ravens, but man, proud of each and every man.
The big question is if the growing continues. There are cautionary examples of teams that surprised a lot of media, of fans over the course of a year, and then the next year they don't do much more than what they'd done the year before. Sometimes it's due to a more difficult schedule. Sometimes it's due to some changes in the roster. Sometimes it's due to injuries. Sometimes it's due to a change in the coaching staff. But I would point to last year's example of this. Didn't everyone think that after Trevor Lawrence's dramatic comeback against the Los Angeles Chargers in the first round of the playoffs, shaking off 4 interceptions, and then going on to the second round of the playoffs and hanging in there with Kansas City, the eventual Super Bowl champions, a lot of people thought that the Jaguars were going to take that next step the next season. They didn't take any steps. In fact, they probably took a step back. And you could argue that now they might have to press the reset button on all things not named Trevor Lawrence there. Doug Peterson, okay, he sticks around, but what's Peterson going to do his third year? A guy who has run out of town after winning a Super Bowl in Philadelphia. Maybe there were some reasons for that actually make sense. It's hard to think of them off the top of your head from the outside looking in, but while it was a success, and this is not the same old Houston Texans, you got to wonder about these possible changes in the coming weeks and if they're going to be able to take another step off of it. They have a lot of cap space, but there are a lot of players that they're going to have to give contracts to if they want to keep them around. Jonathan Grenard, who had 12 and a half sacks this past season, is probably going to get around $20 million a year in the offseason. Are you willing to pay that so that you can keep Will Anderson and Jonathan Grenard? Dalton Schultz, also a free agent. Schultz had a good season. Occasional drops, but 59 catches for 635 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. That's 12th in the NFL. Do you have a better option on the roster? Do you feel like Brevin Jordan's better than Dalton Schultz? I don't feel that way. And clearly, C.J. Stroud liked throwing to Dalton Schultz. Then you got on the defensive line. Sheldon Rankins is going to be a free agent. Cornerback Steven Nelson on the other side of the field is a free agent. Blake Cashman, who had a breakout season at linebacker, he's a free agent. Running back Devin Singletary, who was your second leading receiver in this game on Saturday, he is a free agent. Noah Brown, who had a couple of huge games this year but dealt with injuries down the stretch, he is a free agent. Kaimi Fairbairn, yeah, he missed a 47-yard field goal, but he was the model of consistency before that over the course of the year. He's a free agent. Your punter, Cam Johnston, he's a free agent. George Fant, your right tackle, he's a free agent. Jerry Hughes, who you probably won't see next year, also a free agent. Defensive end Derek Barnett, who came on strong at the end of the year, free agent. Denzel Perriman. Lots of free agents for this team. There will be some turnover. Desmond King, pretty good in run support as a defensive back. All of those guys are not going to be back next year. And you got to wonder if the replacements will be better. They could be. They might not be. You're rolling the dice at this moment in time if you're trying to predict that. And then, of course, you've got the coaches that are potentially leaving. Sometimes a new coach can completely ruin the progress of a young quarterback. I don't think that Mac Jones was entirely done in by the coaches that he had to work with in New England. I think he has some clear limitations in talent, but look what happened when they changed coordinators. Look what happens when Josh McDaniels leaves. It's a disaster. Now, I'm not expecting the Texans to bring in Matt Patricia to be offensive coordinator if Bobby Slowik gets an offensive coordinator job elsewhere, or if Gerard Johnson leaves and Bobby Slowik leaves, which I think is very unlikely. But I think to predict success, more success than you had this year specifically, going forward than the Houston Texans, it's not something that is a lock like a lot of people are saying today. We want to believe that's the case, but it's not always the case. I will say, I do like hearing CJ Stroud's mentality after this, though, because there has been a whole lot of over the last 48 hours. Yeah, the season was great. The season was a success. But your expectations change over the course of the year. I don't want to hear that this season was a success, even if by definition, compared to the expectations going into the year, it was. So here's CJ Stroud saying it's hard to call this season a success.
I mean, it's hard to answer that right now. I know where I come from in college, like, if you don't win at all, like, then it's kind of a fail. So that's kind of like the mindset I have. I think we have the capability, we have the team to do it. I know, we come up short, you know? So, like, you can't look back and, like, dang, like, we didn't do nothing special. You got to, of course, like, really look back and smile throughout everything. But at the same time, like, it's like, dang, man, what if? And that's the worst feeling, you know, just having regrets. What if I did this? What if I did that? You know, so just learning experiences.
What if? What if? What if? Great song by Creed. It's hard to call this season a success right now. It's considered a failure if you don't win it all. I like hearing that from CJ Stroud. And I wonder how many players on this team feel the same way and realize that, yeah, this year was fun, but you are not guaranteed to be better next season. And just look how far away you were from beating Baltimore. You, of the 8 teams that played this weekend, played the worst. Just look at the score. I don't care if the Ravens are the 1 seed. You played the worst. The Packers almost beat the 1 seed in the NFC. They just shot themselves in the foot a lot. They had plenty of chances. You got manhandled by the 1 seed in the AFC. Team that does look like it's going to win the AFC championship just based off of what we have seen of late. I really wonder how Kansas City's going to move the ball against that defense. That defense is great. Mike McDonald's going to get a head coaching job somewhere else. Lock.